3-on-1 podcast, and I'm Matt Ryan alongside Cory Hammond. Big Rob this week is on his preseason sojourn to the mountains of Stankonia to prepare to call a litany of people ass over the next several months. Cory, it's here. It's finally here. We don't have to look at each other through screens on Sunday. We're actually going to be in the same place at the same time. And we're gonna actually get to call football, and we're gonna see you back out on the field. Like I'm legitimately excited for Sunday, but I also feel like Sunday's gonna be a big gut check day in the A7FL for a lot of teams, because since July, one thing that we know this league produces is receipts, and I think a lot of receipts are gonna get called on week 1.
I'm interested to hear, other than the Watchmen-U matchup, which, as maybe this is a little bit of a tease for later on in the show, that is a top 10 matchup. Maybe. We'll see.
Could be.
But of all the matchups, the first glance, that's probably the one that stands out for me. But other than you, Watchmen, Matt, what's another matchup that to you is as big of a statement or the kind of narrative that you're looking for week 1 early in the season? What's that other matchup other than maybe the premier matchup that stands out to you?
I think the BIC Insomniacs, BIC Snow Tribe game, pardon me, at 4 o'clock is really interesting. I think our friends over in Nevada, their 4 o'clock game, our 7 o'clock game, Force and Insomniacs, is going to be really interesting to see where those two teams stand. Because we know the Insomniacs are coming off the fall brawl, they're coming off the national championship, but since July, they've lost players, they've had players get hurt, they've had players show up second, third, fourth quarters of games and still win. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with the Force, who they didn't have to play in the fall. They played some of the players, but they didn't play the whole team. They didn't play the actual Force group. So I think that matchup's going to be very interesting. I think when you look across the league, there's going to be a lot of, like, the Octane and the Heist. We've heard a lot about new players and a new system coming to the Heist, a new coach coming to the Heist. And, I know that they're not going to have their best player from 2023, Seth Chambers. He's not coming back as of now to the Heist. I don't know what his future holds, but it seems like he won't be on the Heist this season. I think that hurts them. You hear a lot about the Octane getting a lot of former Indianapolis semi-pro players, getting a lot of personalities from that area in Indiana and Indianapolis. Seems to have a thriving semi-pro community. So the team pulling out from there is going to be really interesting to me. Chaos versus Crush, obviously, because it's two teams that have played each other interestingly, and we'll see how this new retooled Chaos team responds to the last time we saw them getting boat race, getting dog walked all across their home field. It'll be interesting to see how they respond.
And poor Dale Hathaway, he's got to face and get the revenge game for nothing that he had anything to do with. The Chaos are looking for revenge. They're not going to be able to get it on the team that is the get back game until late in the season. That Octane team does sound interesting because if you remember, fans and Matt, that was what we said about the Chaos before they showed up into the division. So,
and they were one game away from a championship.
And it'll be interesting to see if the Octane and a brand new team that we really know nothing about, they can kind of match that initial energy that the Chaos brought into the Ohio division. Starting kind of their own little offshoot division in the Midwest. The Indiana segment. I'm really excited to see how seriously the Insomniacs are going to take teams like the Force. We can all agree that, on a week-in, week-out basis, when a team like, for instance, the Insomniacs or BIC or the U face one of those more, bottom teams that's kind of still finding their footing in the league, in Vegas, and no disrespect to these guys, but it would be teams that are similar, right? Hit bosses, gold, hunters kind of thing, right? It really doesn't in my opinion, and I think Rob would agree, it does not matter the level of commitment that the Insomniacs show up to those games because they're going to take care of business one way or the other. To me, it'll be interesting to see in games against teams like the Force, where it's not their biggest rival, Matt, right? It's not Sick with It, where they have to show up because there's basically no other team on the schedule that, kind of has that marquee type of feel. And week 1 is a time where you most commonly will see a team's best shot because everybody's still pent up from the offseason. Everybody wants to get back on the field and show what they got. But that force game and that force range is kind of that danger zone for teams like the Insomniacs that are in essence so good that they can walk onto a field with a less than A+ effort and still dominate games. So that overconfidence is what I'm going to be looking at as maybe their biggest opponent this year, and no better spot than against a team that, I don't know if a lot of us believe in them 100% after seeing, the promise of what we were told De'Aaron Fox would be kind of withering away as the Vegas fall kind of progressed last year. But make no mistake, the original Vegas division champs, a structure with a head coach that is about, building up the strength of the body, the strength of the camaraderie of the team. He's building a program with all the air quotes right things in mind. It's said that they've kind of shored up the running game a little bit, and that will help out whoever ends up playing quarterback. And maybe having Rock Briscoe be the signal caller from the sideline and not the guy who's meant to make the plays on the field. De'Aaron Fox can benefit from having a guy that knows how to run a successful A7 offense and kind of give him the insight so that he can make the physical plays and not have to worry about calling the plays and making the mental plays and kind of ease into that. But for me, it all comes down to 7 p.m. Eastern time when I get back on the field against the Silk City Animals with my Eastern Renegades. I'm excited, Matt.
And Cory, I don't know if you know this.
Even know if you guys will be
Me and Rob are going to be calling that game. We're going to be calling that one.
Oh, you guys are going to be watching?
We're going to be calling that one and we've got a whole bunch of new people who are going to be watching the A7FL this year, Cory. I don't know if you know how many places you're going to be able to watch the A7FL this year.
No, tell me.
Holy, I will in a second once I pull it up. It's like we're doing this on the fly here. I got to do. We don't have Rob. We don't have our safety.
I should have given you a couple more seconds.
Nah, it's not your fault. It's other things. But you can watch us obviously on A7FL.TV and YouTube. A7FL.TV now powered by our friends over at Scene. So you're going to get more enhanced highlights on our webs on A7FL.TV. You're going to get great moments. You're going to get all this stuff on demand, and also internationally, if you're living outside the U.S. and you want to watch the A7FL and a whole bunch of people beating the piss out of one another, go to our friends at DAZN. Sign up to the DAZN right now, DAZN.com. If you are living outside the U.S., you can watch us there. But that's not it. That's not all. You can watch us on Caffeine. After millions of views, we are back for the 2024 season on Caffeine TV, caffeine.tv/A7FL, and also the front page of Caffeine all Sunday afternoon. And guys, I know that you get tired of me, Rob, and Cory. And I get it. We're too handsome. We sound nice. And we're going to look great on Sunday. I'm wearing a suit jacket. Like, I'm actually going to take care of myself. I bought concealer. I bought eye makeup because I've decided that I am going to give a shit about how I look this year. I'm not going to look like a goalie coach every week. Some weeks I'm going to look like a goalie coach, but a lot of the stuff.
Some goalie coaches are actually very attractive. If you go up and down Saskatchewan, you will find some very attractive goalie coaches, Matt. The fact that you disparage all goalie. Look, we are an inclusive bunch here at the 3-on-1, and we will not have goalie coach or Matt Ryan disparagement at all.
But yeah,
But yeah, we're going back to the Blazer look, huh?
well, yeah.
Oh, that
Not
must have been
every week though. For special events, it's like when you were a kid and you had to go to your grandma's house. That's what this is like. But no ties, no goddamn ties. Going back to the Creator Sports Network. That's what I was going to. Some of the biggest creators across the internet will be watching and reacting to our games in real time on Facebook, on Twitter, on X, on TikTok, on Twitch, wherever there is a famous person streaming. The Creator Sports Network will be bringing you A7FL action all across the internet. And if you can't catch us live, obviously the A7FL YouTube channel, but we are back on Stadium with the best game of the week, one game of the week, every single week on Stadium. Shout out to our friends over at Bally Sports and Stadium for bringing us back for the 2024 season. So you'll see a lot of A7FL action all across the internet. But Cory, it has begun. It is time. We have been fuffering around for 17 minutes. And the thing that we came up with last year that we thought would be fun, would be engaging, would be a nice piece of content to do week over week, and then turned into something that I never in my life would have expected to be such a thing of, like, so many arguments over, and that's the 3-on-1 top 10 list.
Well, listen, Mary Shelley would be proud. It is Frankenstein's monster that we created, and just to be clear to everybody, just so that you sound like an intelligent human, the monster is not Frankenstein.
No, Frankenstein.
The doctor is Frankenstein.
Exactly.
Now, he's a monster, so you can call him the monster. But anyway, I digress. I don't know. I'm on this kick where I need to try to educate people. I feel like there's a lot of people that could benefit from a little extra education in a lot of areas, and you already scolded me for our pre-show talk, so I won't go into those tangents. But
why do you make it seem
the
like I was scolding you like a parent?
No, it just sounds funnier when
That's fair.
you scold me as opposed to you just like
Busting
vehemently plead not
please,
to
please,
continue.
Cory. No, Cory. Please, for the love of God, no. That's what most of our pre-production meetings sound like. But the top 10 is back, Cory, and
Yes,
I'm excited.
so is everyone else.
I think no, everyone's excited until they find out the list, and then on Friday
and then they
morning,
get excitable.
Yeah,
and then they get excitable.
It's a fucking Warren Zevon album from start
All
to
right,
finish.
before we drop this list, who cares the most about where they're placed of all the teams that may or may not?
Ooh, I think
I know mine.
Oh, I think that.
How about this? Give yourself time to think, because this is easy.
Which team isn't?
Which team cares the least?
I think the
Which team
Patterson.
cares?
I think the Patterson U. I think Patterson
I
U.
think the Nightcrawlers. I think the Nightcrawlers.
Yeah,
do
I
not
think.
give a
Yeah.
shit about the.
No,
Redskins.
I just meant like of teams that would give a damn. Like I don't think the Nightcrawlers care.
Okay.
I don't think Sick cares. I think the Force doesn't care. I don't think a lot of those teams. Sick might care a little bit, but I think the players who don't care about that anymore are on other teams, and they should not be mad.
I think Sick cares. They just might not. They might
don't
not
sell
say
for
anything
it.
about it yet. Well, they might not say anything about it yet because honestly, to be fair, and no disrespect to Sick,
To be fair,
they know that the goal is to beat the Insomniacs
Yeah.
first, and then they can worry about everything the fuck else. And if they beat the Insomniacs, then I guarantee they will be chirping louder than every bird outside my window in the morning now that it's spring. Matt, I got a nest right over my garage doors. It's awesome. Love that sound. The rest of my family doesn't like it, but I'm a nature guy, so I'm just like, it sounds nicer than the garbage truck whizzing by. But they'll be squawking like that if they beat the Insomniacs. So I think they care, but I think that they know that they have no say until they beat the team to beat in their division.
yeah.
And I think that the Patterson U, I think that they outwardly say, like Ryan Shamar kind of presents, oh, we don't care. Oh, we don't give a shit about that. That stuff's not important to us. We're about, we're ass, right? Just putting it on notice for the league, just a reminder, the U is ass, right? But I will say that when the Renegades scrimmaged the U, I had multiple guys come up to me and say, Really, Corey? There's not a top 7 wide receiver on the U. I think they listen a little, just a touch, maybe a little bit. So who's the team that you think cares the most then?
Oh, I think it's the defending champions. I think the
You
defending.
think the
I think certain people in the defending champions will, no
Do you
matter.
think that? All right. So listen, there's 2 hypothetical scenarios because literally it's a binary option. It's either one or the other, no matter what, right? Like there really isn't. So I think that they don't give a shit if they're number 1.
If they're below
they're
number
like,
1,
if
that's
they're
what
below
I'm
number-
saying.
yeah.
If they're not at
Yeah,
number
yeah, yeah.
1, I know exactly what's going to happen around
I agree with
12:30
that.
on Friday. Like after I get through my
12:01,
yeah.
12:00:01. Yeah, they'll fast forward to it. No, shout outs to my Insomniacs guys. They're great. Love them. Especially love the physical fitness showed by all of their players because they're all great athletes. And anybody that says otherwise is a jerk and an asshole. I don't know why I had to throw that out there, but I felt like it was needed. But I think they don't give a shit if they're number 1. Then they're like, oh, business as usual, we're good to go, and then they'll go about their business. I think that they would care more than any team ever if they weren't, and we'll see how that shakes out, guys.
Yeah.
Keep listening. For me, the team that I think cares the most about where they are, because I feel like they think that this is the validation that could help them, is the real Sin City and the Sin City Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that literally talk about it. And other than Chris Vera, who mentions it, I think that Brent Smothers has his eyes on increasing either the stock or the perception of who the Chaos are. And we give them a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. They burst onto the scene, similar to a lot of these teams that win a lot of early games and then talk about how they own the league and then get humbled, right? Look no further than Santa Monica and those pants. Shout outs to the Vibe. Rest in power. But for the Chaos, Matt, all the shit we give them, rightfully so, all of the shade Rob throws their way, rightfully so, I think that more than any team that I've heard of are desperately moving in the direction that Rob has been talking about. Because we can look around all of the moves in the league, and there's a lot of really good ones. There's a lot of really impactful ones. But when you look at just the sheer volume of guys that they were trying to bring in from either other teams, they got the Dondre clone that they have out in Ohio, a kid that used to play for the QC Crush. His name is slipping my mind, so Brent, in the comments, fill the rest of the listeners in. But they recruited a big, huge playmaker from another team. So that's check. They did that. They were out there recruiting other players from other divisions, right? We talk about Trey Robinson. He didn't get there, but they were making the effort and overtures to that effect, check. And then you look at the guys that they added to the roster from the local kind of culture of Ohio football, Kentucky football, getting a lot of guys. And you mentioned a name earlier in the show. Hypothetically, whispers that might end up being a thing. Now,
Yeah.
I don't think we can report it yet, right?
No, I don't think we can report it, but there's a lot of scuttlebutt going on, and I think that between now and Sunday, because there's one thing, and I don't know if I can say it or not, but I had to edit part 2 of my season preview on A7FL.com, and you can read that preview, the first part, at A7FL.com. One player who was in our 1 o'clock game, I wrote about him playing for one team. He is now playing for another team. He's playing for the opponent in that game. And you don't know who it is yet, but you're going to find out.
do.
I know, you know, Rob knows, our staff knows, but you're going to find out on Sunday. And just as a hint, he was on camera in the last time these two teams played inside the production bunker. So to go from that moment, and there were only 2 people on camera, if you go back and you watched the U Watchmen game,
Yep,
you'll find out who it is. One of them you're going to see on the field on Sunday for the Watchmen. We've talked about that person ad nauseum.
Yes.
The other person. Oh, that's going to be a problem. Oh, my. If he does what he did last year.
You're talking about
team.
you're talking about the one that came in and we interviewed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. We'll put it this way. Another further hint. Based on how I oppose the U, I am personally a little bit upset.
Oh, you've got to be pissed. You've got to be.
I mean, it
mad.
is what it is. Listen, it is what it is. I mean, it was kind of one way or the other. But
But
that is
that
huge
guy.
move. Yeah, and
That's I think the biggest move. Aside from keeping Snags, aside from keeping Carlos Croslin, aside from getting Huff and the Ramadan brothers back, bringing in Jason Sisson, those are great. But the moves they made on the defensive side of the ball, that move alone sets one hell of a tone.
Yeah, I think it's just the funny thing is it's what league could you have a situation in which the lead writer for the website has an article about a player playing against the team that he ends up playing? Oh, shit, I got to change this up a little bit.
Oh, let me look at the rosters. Oh, that is very wrong. I have to fix that now. But one thing we're not going to fix, well, wait, we can't because it's locked in already, is the top 10. And we might as well rip the Band-Aid off.
Now, listen, I know that this list is important to you in the macro, I guess. But in the micro, just take care of your business, win your games, get to the point in the playoffs where you can make a statement. Because, yes, there is going to be shade and hate. But, like Matt tells me and Rob all the time, or more like Matt and Rob tell me all the time, nothing great is done in this world, right? Back in the day, the world was different. But in this world, nothing great is accomplished without a little bit of hate. And with that hate comes the motivation maybe for you guys to take that next step to earn the right to have a ring after the season. Jesus Christ, they had a division ring made, whatever. Anyway, the top 10, Matt.
It is
How's
always
it gonna
interesting.
Shake out?
Yeah, let's start with the number 10 team in Chaos. You know you're on the list because you shared the 3-on-1 A7FL post that you could follow now on Instagram. We're counting down the team. We counted down some of the teams you'll see, but you're not number 10. Coming in at number 10, the Vegas Force, team that made the playoffs last year, a perennial contender in the upper tier of the A7FL Nevada mix. Cory, a lot of disappointment for the Force organization last season. You know, got a bad matchup in the tournament in the national playoff. Got bounced against Sick With It. Had an up and down season, I would say, as opposed to the Force we saw in 2022. But as we head into 2024, it's really hard to see any other team take that 3 spot away from the Force. And when you look at some of the other teams across the A7FL, if you throw the Force in most divisions, they're going to compete.
Well, and they have the formula, right? They're willing to do the things that it takes to build a successful, well, the idea of a successful culture, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about some of the moves that were made, one of the moves I think that goes under the radar is, and, you know, with the A7FL, this could change. But as far as I know, Curtis Pac-Man Jones has defected from the Force.
He is on Sick.
Joining Sick With It.
He played with Sick in the fall, and it seemed like that was the place he wanted to go.
Well, and we barely talked about it because after year one, we actually had Curtis Jones on as a guest on our pod, and he warned the rest of the Vegas division that it was the Force's to win and that they had to come through him, and that didn't age very well. When we go through receipts, if we really wanted to pull that one up, that was one that has a little bit of a get back that, yeah, a little spicy if we really wanted to go into it.
And looking at the roster right now, they've got Jeremiah Branch, who, shout out to Jeremiah and his family. He's a longtime listener of the
Shout
show.
out to Jace.
Yeah, shout out to Jace.
My guy.
But I'm seeing Tone Smith on this roster, and I'm seeing Devontae Moncrief on this roster.
Yep.
Devontae Moncrief in Fall Brawl for the Alienators was one of the big bright spots, and the fact that Coach Q could not bring him over to the pit bosses and he allowed the Force to pick him up, that's a big loss. Well, that kid's special.
And it's funny because we talk about how the Force, they lose out in situations because they're not in the tournament in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's why they lost Pac-Man Jones. But I think them being able to kind of secure, survey kind of the competition and kind of pick and choose who they might want to add, I think that also is a hypothetical benefit that I don't think we've ever mentioned before. But when I mentioned earlier that the Forces, them Forces, they shored up their running game, that's literally what I meant. And that kid, Moncrief, he cures a lot of sins for an offense. And if you can have a running back, look no further than the formula that the Insomniacs won the championship with. When you have a running back that can be that bell cow, and no disrespect in any way using the cow reference, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A good running game turns into a great running game the more consistently you bludgeon a defense with it. And what we know about Vegas defenses in general, other than maybe the top teams, but in Vegas defenses in general, is at a certain point, business is part of the decision, right? And with a guy like Moncrief, first quarter, sure, you're going to throw your whole body in there to try to stop him for a 3-yard gain. But those 3-yard gains, third and fourth quarter, they might be 6- and 7-yard games. So if the culture of the Force holds, they play football the right way, they play good, strong defense, they can get a lead. Moncrief is the kind of guy that almost comes in like a baseball closer, and you throw him in there with a four-seam cutter. I don't even know if that's the right thing, but
I don't think you could do a four-seam cutter, but we'll ask David Silberman, our baseball expert, on that.
Exactly. So ask Mariano Rivera personally. I know David knows him. And David still just texts me, who's the father. So shout outs to David. But the Force, to me, and let's peel back the curtain a little bit, Matt, because we're having fun today. When we originally did this list, it was before we knew all the information, and John Gauze, a championship-winning quarterback, used to be on another roster with a lot of other guys, right?
Yes.
The Buzz. No disrespect to the Buzz, but losing all of those hypothetical players, they dropped out. And
they fell off the list. And it's not a knock on, Keith Salmon Jr., who has taken over the GM role. No, it's not a personal
not him
slight.
Specifically.
No.
Yeah, not him specifically. But when you're 0-7
and
0-6 and you're not, and you don't even want to show up like for instance, Hunters,
who are
and you
also
don't even
not
want to show
on
up
the
for the poor guys.
Oof.
Shout outs to girlfriends in general, we'll just say.
Oh, that's done. That's done, by the way. Yeah, that's done. He's the starter. That's...
No, I don't want to do it. We already did it.
That's all I'm going to say.
We already did it too much. I'm not going to do it.
All I'm saying is he's the starter, and I don't know.
Single now is what you're saying?
Yeah. He's single, ladies. And speaking of single, not a single person will fault us for this. Our number 9 pick was a team that, despite making the Western Conference Final and shoring up, as we said before, have a lot of work to do. The Sin City Chaos coming in at 9.
Now, the biggest win that Sin City had, I think, in a long time was the court case.
Yes.
But nobody really cared about that episode, so we're going to move on.
People cared enough to get mad at me that we did it. And that's how I know it was successful.
All right, so it was effective then. And my bad for trying, guys. I warn you at the end of every episode.
That's not the reason.
I'm joking. But yeah, so Chaos, listen, 9. Yikes.
They weren't even on the list last year, I think, in week 1.
Well, not week 1. And they earned their right to be considered because they were bludgeoning teams. They were undefeated. And almost to their detriment, they made the rest of the Ohio division look incompetent. Now, let's be clear. The Ohio division is probably the second fastest growing division in the league. I mean, it's actually an absolute. They are the second fastest growing division in the league. And give credit to the Chaos for doing all of the things that I think that they are hypothetically able to do to change the perception preseason. Problem is that they're not going to change the fucking thing. Excuse my language. I will be speaking clean for Sunday, and you can catch us on all of those places Matt mentioned earlier in the show.
You can find those places at a7fl.com/watch. By the way, that's a7fl.com/watch.
Yeah, there's so many. There's so many that even the elite professional broadcaster Matt Ryan gave you the drop to the list, not even the list in order, but just hey, check the list out.
And we didn't even mention the newest partner that just got announced on Wednesday. The Urban Edge Network, Byron Allen, is partnering with the A7FL to bring us on live every single week on the HBCU Plus app.
Let's go.
So it is going to be exciting.
They lose Dion last year,
and they gain us.
A little sad. They get us. Now we won't ditch them for Colorado. That's for sure.
Well, it depends on the money, but
well.
and also botany. But yeah, the Chaos looking to burn up the charts here. They come in at the number 9 spot, but
and let's just be clear. I don't think that this list should matter to them as much unless they use it for motivation.
Because
go ahead.
Here's how we constructed this list. Looking at the 2024 schedule as it was composed and kind of doing some win dog, lost dog, mixed with what they did in 2023.
Mixed with, fuck you guys. No, I'm sure.
Mixed with roster moves, and things that we know that could be confirmable. And some of it's weighted on where you landed last season, but a lot of it's weighted on your expectations for this season.
And look, eye test and reputation matter a little bit. And for the Chaos coming in at number 9 on a top 10, whatever, they can take it how they want. But the problem is they will not be able to change the narrative with anything other than consistent winning. So, look, you guys did a great job in division last year for a first-year team, very similar to an arc, for instance, as our number 10 team in the Force. Win a division, not the most well-built division at the time Vegas was, right? And get to play a national game, boat raced.
But both of them did win playoff games to get to that next level. And then fell on the other side and walked into the next season with a lot more to prove. And
if they're focused on doing the right things, which it looks like they are, to be honest, Matt.
I can't.
If they're focused on doing the right things, then that's a good place to start. But just to remind the Chaos, if they're focused on the national narrative or all this other bullshit and the hate coming from the national media and all this other kind of shit, then look no further than what happened to the Force. Curtis Jones, a member of the Force, now a member of Sick With It, came out and said, this is the Force's division. Everybody sucks compared to us. There's no competition out here. And then what happened? A brand new team that didn't exist the year before in the same vein, in the Insomniacs, showed up.
They existed,
took over the division.
But the new leadership came in.
Exactly. They didn't exist in the way that they exist now.
We can't forget that Sick entered all these other teams, the Gold, Over the Top, Kryptonite, all the teams we saw in fall of 2022, those were brand new teams. Like, those are now the legacy teams, the Legacy 8. But look at the Ohio division. Yeah.
You have the
QC Crush,
Octane.
you have the Octane, you have the Olatangi Volcanoes, you have the Columbus as well. Like, there's a lot of different teams.
And there's 2 new teams, and one of the teams has a very similar story than the Chaos had coming in.
Yep.
It's a group of guys that played with each other, had some success in the semi-pro, yada yada, right? If they take care of business, all of the things that they want and need will take care of themselves. So, number 9 on our list, Chaos. And if they have a problem with it, and they should, if they really believe that they're that good, then prove it to us week in and week out, and don't get frustrated after week 1 that you didn't jump to number 2, because it's going to take a lot more than an opening day victory against the QC Crush and my guy Dale Hathaway to crack a little bit higher in this top 10.
And at number 8, the one thing on the list that we had the most arguments about, because one person believed they shouldn't be on the list, and the 2 other people thought they should be on the list. The East Orange Renegades coming in at number 8. Cory, you fought this vehemently, but you returning to that organization that was hanging tough and was beating the BIC at one point, were in games, and DeAndre Haynes is on that defense. He's going to be a tight end. Knowing what you've said about DeAndre Haynes as a weapon, and you being able to integrate that game plan, being able to help a team that just lost Mike Liberti, that lost Khalil Green, and lost the Defensive Player of the Year, Trey Baskerville, but kept a lot of the key pieces of their defense. Corey Price was their quarterback for last year. He got hurt, but what about this Renegades team this year? Do you think, aside from Corrance Hammond the first, is
that fucking guy,
that piece of shit?
Hey, no,
you're like one of my best friends, right?
Bro, I know, it's just funny.
I know, but it is like to be completely serious. Rob and Cory, in the 5 years I've known Cory and the 2 years I've really gotten to work with Rob, have quickly become like some of my best friends. And I'm very grateful that I get a chance to work with my best friend Alex Soberman, his brother David, Zach, who's become a great friend and a great, member of our team, Ryan, who I don't hate, but Jared Wright, like the A7FL production team on the national side does not get the credit they deserve for what they have to work with with us every week. They have to deal with us 3 every week.
I mean, they literally have to deal with one of the commentators being an active player in the league, and for them to overcome that discrepancy, that horrible, terrible thing.
Up until last year, I was their boss. Like, I'm not the senior producer this year. It's David, Alex, and Zach's job. I get to just show up on Sunday. Before that, I'm still in charge, and I get to yell at everybody.
To be clear, for as good of friends as we are, you'd think we should have a little bit better chemistry, right, Joey Bate?
Yo,
I'll call them right out.
We're not going to talk about a team that's
Rob's
not
here,
anymore. So
okay,
I have to
okay,
be
okay.
dad. I have to be dad.
That's fine.
I listen to the parlay, and as a producer, I'll say it. They're engaging. They have chemistry, but it's not stop the fucking world chemistry. I don't think it's as good chemistry as we 3 have, especially because Cory, you and Rob have some of the best fucking chemistry on television, because y'all Skip and Stephen A each other to death, and both of you alternate.
People think we actually like argue too. It's so funny.
It's.
I mean, we kind of do. Actually argue.
It's some of the best pro wrestling I've ever seen, because it's just 2 guys who don't give a fuck, just not willing to yield to the other human being. It's impressive. It's impressive to listen to you 2 just find new and interesting ways to argue with one another when you have the same point.
How about, you remember when Rob got all spicy when we went on the Vegas pod, and he was talking about how Kwame Southall was the best quarterback of that fall, even though he when we asked him at the end, he was just making the argument, right? I don't know. Rob's
that's the thing that I don't think people get. And also we do a great job of keeping kayfabe. This is a show. We're doing show. And I feel like I have to keep saying that because people get really mad. And I get it, but this is the Stephen A. Smith of the A7FL stuff. This is us hyperbole. There we go. But continuing with this,
that was a great breakdown of the Renegades. And let me just be clear, just to my Renegades guys that are listening, but as a member of the team, I felt like it would have made more sense to me specifically, and that's why I argued with you guys. If we earned our way in,
Yeah.
more kind of arriving there from the beginning, I do kind of respect or appreciate the respect that me coming back to the team, and even Ryan Shamar said it, so it's not kind of just you guys. I think in general, the guys who kind of know this league are happy to see me back with guys that I've had chemistry with in the past.
You brought that team to the playoffs. Like you guys could have won that game in Delaware. Like you guys had a shot.
And to be clear, it's kind of glossed over, even though their record wasn't better. Kenneth Stewart also brought them to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now they lost to, I think they lost to the U.
Yes, U.
So I mean, that was not specifically Kenneth Stewart's fault, and we'll see where he lines up. Maybe for a team that we mentioned, maybe not later on this list. But I will say this about the Renegades. Everybody who's ever played against them, including guys like Sterry Codrington, every quarterback in the Northeast, that's for sure, knows that playing this team is not it's not a game that you show up on Sunday and super excited about the prospects of. Because the Renegades, week in, week out, whether they're winning the game or they're eventually going to, fall short to a team that's maybe a little bit better than them, this team fights. This team plays
It's
great
one of the
defensive
toughest
line.
outs in the A7FL. Like,
and I think,
you've got a better shot of winning than losing if you're the BIC or the U or the Watchman. But it's a motherfucker of a game, man. Like the way you guys play defense, the way they ran the ball, just and now adding that element of a quarterback who can. Cory got hurt. I have some hopes for the Renegades. I just don't want to see my friend get hurt. That's all I want.
Listen,
I don't want to have to run onto the field like Adrian at the end of Rocky, carrying you out of there. I don't want to have to throw in the towel like Arnold Skolin when Bob Backlund lost to the Iron Sheik. I don't know why I said Iron Sheik the way I just did. But moving on to the team that I think
love you, Renegades. Let's go. Anyway,
have put the biggest spotlight and expectation of any team that isn't in the top 5. And it's all self-imposed. And that's the Rahway Snow Tribe. I think that the Snow Tribe this year have to prove that the brand isn't carrying them, they're carrying the brand. Because when you think of a team in this league that has a look, a vibe, that's trying to do social the right way and is integrated with one of the greatest football players on the planet. The man has been to a Pro Bowl almost every season and is the reason why Josh Allen doesn't get hit on Sundays.
And he's a Walter Payton Man of the Year candidate every year.
Yeah, like that's the brand of the Snow Tribe. You want the Snow Tribe if you're the A7FL. That is the team that you hope out of every other team succeeds in the league because it's everything you want in a team.
Is that why we put them ahead of a team in, like, I don't know, the Force, which they lost to directly? No, I'm just joking. That's a nice little shot.
No, but they added the Defensive Player of the Year.
I can hear Derek Duncan and guys of the like being like, why are they putting Snow Tribe? Let me just explain the Snow Tribe thing to everybody. The Snow Tribe team that played the Force was the same team that got blown out 80-0 by BIC. That is not the same roster that came week in, week out last year and competed in the playoffs against the U for a full 2.5 quarters. The Snow Tribe's roster, when you look at it, it looks like they have what it takes. I scrimmaged them head-to-head. I will say that their depth at offensive line is impressive to me. Now, would Rob say the same thing? I don't know. We'll see what he says. You only have to wait 3 days.
4 o'clock.
But
2 days.
We'll see
what
Rob says. That's true, because technically it's Friday, right?
Yes, it's Friday. Even though we're recording. Terminator timeline. Terminator timeline.
Right. It's Days of Future Past. Right? Yes?
Yes.
No? Anyway, so Snow Tribe, their defense, they do add a pass rusher to a pass rush that was not ill-equipped.
No. And
They're-
that's a guy in
defensive-
Trey Baskerville who, if you give him the ability to work, can get multiple sacks in the game, can be a disruptor in the game. His range, his length, like, he's a fucking problem. And I think that Trey's feeling a lot of scrutiny right now because of the Snow Tribe making him the marquee pickup in the offseason, him winning Defensive Player of the Year, and a lot of criticism. And I think it's fair because of circumstance. Like, you're talking in a vacuum and against the control. The control was Trey playing alongside Megatron for the last couple of seasons, and now you're taking that element out of it. A guy who's 6'9", and you're like, yeah, you're thinking, oh, without that there, Trey may not get as many opportunities, but that doesn't mean he's still not a great player.
Well, I don't even know the truth of that, because the reason that they both were so good together is that they're individually good.
Yes.
So putting them on the same defensive line meant that they were both good. And I personally, playing against the Renegades last year, I was more affected in my game by Trey specifically than Dondre. Now, Dondre was playing more the D tackle. Trey was playing the D end, so that's why that probably is the case. And you double team Dondre because he's
that's what
unblockable. But
even with those variables, Trey Baskerville's a very good football player.
And I personally, just to be clear, I voted for A.J. McQuaig for Defensive Player of the Year because when you look at the statistics, Trey's were amazing, but they weren't as dominant as we saw A.J. in the Vegas division, in my opinion. I mean, the numbers are the numbers.
I think there's a lot of arguments that can be made for both AJ and for Trey, because you can go into
and that's what happened, right?
Yeah, that the strength of schedule.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened.
55 different things.
But for me, I also think that go no further than the booth last year when Trey came into the booth, was talking about not that he was disparaging the Renegades or that he hates those guys. But he was looking for something different. He wanted a fresh start with a new team, with a new situation. And this is that situation. Now, when we were talking to him, the hypothetical conversation is him going to a team like BIC or the U, like that kind of team. But him going to the Snow Tribe, a lot of people know the exact reason why he's going to the Snow Tribe. And it's funny that he's doing the same thing that we saw Isaac Negron do, the 2022 Defensive Player of the Year last year. And I don't know, did he live up to the hype, or was the hype too much to live up to? I don't think Isaac had a bad season last year, but for being the marquee pickup, Defensive Player of the Year, I wonder if Trey kind of falls into a similar trap, because how good of a season does Trey Baskerville have to have for it to be worth it for them to kind of focus their whole offseason around a defensive end again? I don't know, but he's an absolute fantastic playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. And if they're smart, maybe they can work him in on the offensive side of the ball, because he does have skills there. But I think, to me, the Snow Tribe are going to go as far as they can get their run game to go. And when you look at a guy like Suge, if he can show up consistently and perform consistently, they're going to have a chance to at least have a running game that's respectable enough that whoever ends up being the quarterback, and there are a couple options, I think they've moved on from Keels, Matt. I think they're looking at either a new guy that nobody really is 100% familiar with. I saw him up close and personal, and I kind of get it. Or Kenneth Stewart, who has shown, like I said, we just mentioned the Renegades. He's brought a team to the playoffs in this league.
And he's he's a dynamic athlete. He has the ability to. I think timing has been his issue, and also.
Well, and last year, this is kind of a hidden little tidbit. Last year, he sat behind the greatest quarterback in the history of this league.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he learned quite a bit from Quattrell Huffin. It's funny, I look at Kenneth Stewart and some of his play calls, and I can see the kinds of things that he picked up from my game. Not much to pick up, but he did pick up some things. if he can adjust his game and incorporate some of the things that Quattrell Huffin can do and has shown him maybe how to do last year when they were on the Animals together, you know, we'll see how that quarterback position shakes up. But I think when it really comes down to it, the Snow Tribe are on this list because of a promise that their roster makes to us year in and year out, which is they have the depth. They have a lot of name recognition type players that have made impacts in this league. It's just, do they have the structure and the kind of leadership at the top to kind of circumvent the what has basically been the result, which is the problem for the Snow Tribe year in year out.
And to say that they made the playoffs 2 years in a row. They've made the playoffs the last two seasons.
They made the playoffs in the sense that they beat the O for Buzz and the O for
Animals.
Omegas. No, the Omegas.
Well, I'm talking about in 2022.
Yeah, well then, whatever. But I'm talking last year they beat the O, and they beat the O for Animals the year before that.
Yeah.
But they lost to all of the teams other than the O for Buzz, which was a relatively close game for a while, and they allowed over 200 yards passing to the O for Omegas. You're welcome. And what they have been is that promise of a team that can be good. I would love to see, except for the weeks that we play them, obviously. Maybe even the weeks that we play them, because then a competitive game would be more fun. But I would love to see them kind of answer on that promise. And I think their staying power in this list, Matt, depends directly on the success of whoever it is that plays quarterback for them. And if they have to go out with Keels, at least that he's kind of like a constant that they know. But if Keels is their go-to starter week in, week out, I think we could all agree that they don't deserve to be here on this list.
I think they fall off that list.
But again, the promise of what they could have built, we'll see.
Yeah.
And I think the respect that we have for a lot of their playmakers and the depth that they bring, and kind of like you said, they have to start to eventually be good if they're run by an NFL All-Pro player eventually. Or Kenny Stansbury is going to take them over and win year one like he's promised. But anyway, Snow Tribe, you've made the initial top list. You cannot say that we only throw shade your way. We just promoted you up there, so we'll see how they live up to that in their week one matchup against the team that I think we're probably going to see on this list a little bit later, aren't we?
I think we are. And a team that is on our list that was the most high-powered offense possibly in A7FL history when it came to scoring. Every single week when we would mention this team, it would be an unfair advantage, and they got even better over the fall, adding Curtis Jones. And that is the team coming in at number 6 on our list. That is Sickwit.
Now, Sickwit could have maybe had a moving day in the fall championship if they won. And I think, we've talked about that. Well, what's funny is we talked about that game more than the local coverage of that division, but whatever. But we've talked about that game and that situation, I think, enough to kind of say that I thought that they wasted a perfect opportunity to help the league out tremendously, because if that rivalry becomes an honest rivalry that every single time those teams face each other, it's the biggest game of that division season, right? And maybe that's where it is now, but when one team is undefeated against the other, eventually it's going to start to feel like it's not that type of a matchup.
Yeah.
And we'll see how Sickwit responds. But
it can go from Duke, North Carolina to Texas Rice really quick.
Well, and so far it's been Duke, North Carolina when North Carolina was sanctioned. But even Ryan Shamar, who's a New Jersey guy, he's obviously paying attention around the league, so he knows a little bit of what's going on, maybe more than the average guy that's joining RTU. Shout-outs to Keith Salmons about the Vegas division. But he even said that the Sickwit Insomniacs does have a little bit of a feel of BICU.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that rivalry has taken, the U-BIC rivalry has taken a full decade to reach the fever pitch at where it is now, where it's synonymous, I would say, in my
It's our
humble
defining
opinion.
rivalry, I'd say,
Well,
right now.
I would say it's synonymous with, like, I don't know, Army, Navy,
Mm.
Boston Red Sox, New York
It's
Yankees,
the league's defining
North
feud.
Carolina, Duke. I would say it's right there. And we could maybe even do a show about this on our Patreon. No, I'm just joking. We're not there yet, guys.
Well, I do have a
I know you're
Substack.
eager. I know you're eager. But me meandering around that means is that at 6 with Sickwit, Sickwit could maybe even be throwing a temper tantrum out there saying that they're better than some of the New Jersey teams out there. And we've heard that Vegas rhetoric about how Vegas is so much better than everybody else because the Insomniacs won the championship, so all of the teams that lost to the Insomniacs are actually holding that trophy for them because they're their servants. They wash the Insomniacs' feet, so they get to hold the trophy now and then. Whatever. They could be upset about that 6th spot, but if they wanted to climb on this list, all they had to do was beat the big brother, the big bad bully in their division. And we talked maybe ad nauseum when it goes over onto the Facebook posts that I had to continue to update. Fucking sick with it. We talked about the opportunity they had, how they blew it, and how fantastically they blew it with a chance to win. Just like the Chaos, if Sickwit wants to be considered a top team in the 5, the 4, the 3, the 2, even 1, it's really only one thing that they need to do, is they need to show up against the game in the Insomniacs and put more points up on the scoreboard than the team that they're facing. And if Daniel Packer, since he's changed teams, and shout out to my guy, but I am going to use this as a joke because it's easy, it's low-hanging fruit. Since he's on the Insomniacs, if the Insomniacs lose, it's going to be the ref's fault, number 1, 100%. and there will be all these excuses. But if Sickwit takes care of their business, just like Chaos needs to take care of their business, this perception of who they are, where they are, how they line up, it changes instantly. Now, we'll see based on how the games go where they line up in the national rank, if that's what they do. And I am optimistic that is something that's hypothetically possible. And I would argue maybe even better for the division and the league in the regular season. We can talk about that later on this season when we get closer. But week 5 for the Sickwit is where their number 6 ranking can move. And look, there's teams in front of them that might lose. There's teams in front of them there's teams behind them that might win. I respect Sickwit. That's why I give them a lot of shit. But them beating up on OTT 92-36 proves nothing. It proves that you are better than a team that is not as good as you. That's like saying that an apple is red or the sky is blue. And until the election's over, these facts are still facts. Until facts become changed lies. It's number 6, and you're sick with it. So just live with it. It works perfectly. And if you got complaints, you know where to call. And Matt, can you do it so that I don't set you up for the wrong number this time?
Yes, I can. You can call the A7FL 3-on-1 complaint line any time of day at 516-387-2735. That's 516-387-A7FL. So we move on here in the top 10. We go up to the number 5 spot, a team that made the Eastern Conference Final, then lost a bunch of guys, and then got a bunch of guys back, and still lost some decent depth, but added one hell of a player in Cory Price. It's the Baltimore Watchmen at number 5. And the reason why they're not higher is not because they necessarily got worse. It's that the two teams that they played against last year, one team that beat them and the other team they beat, got better.
Well, the other thing is that the kind of the volatile nature of the A7FL DMV off-season, like, what do you even do with the Watchmen? If they came back as constituted from last year's campaign, would you disagree putting them higher on this list? I wouldn't.
No.
When we first started talking about this list, though, it was kind of like the Watchmen split up into Rare Breed, and Gators again.
Yeah.
And look, I know some of the guys with the Watchmen and the Baltimore area are losing, and we can talk about some of them, but like Pac Money wasn't even there, but he's gone, right? They're returning a lot of the guys that were huge parts of them winning, but I also feel like the signaling of that they wanted to break up, it speaks more to the fact that then, well, now they're back together. Because, yeah, they did get back together because the guys that wanted to go in different directions, they just didn't have a landing spot that made sense for them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that they didn't want to still leave. It's like, you know, it's like that, it's like that couple where the girlfriend is like, man, my guy ain't shit, and then she goes to the club and realizes that only like 20% of the men in the populace are single, straight, and available. And
You're just reenacting the Pina Colada song.
Yes.
Like that's
but
the
most of yes. No, exactly.
So if you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, and if you're not into yoga and have half a brain, you belong on the Baltimore.
Well, or you can go to
the DC bus.
The other boyfriend that's not as good as the boyfriend that you're currently dating. And I'm sorry that I'm, you know, I guess emasculating them by putting them in that role. But it does feel like that diva drama that every off season for Maryland. And I know you guys love me. That's why I always speak highly of you and never have anything to say that would make you upset. But for me, the decay of what was there is still there, even though a lot of those guys went back, right? Last year was a perfectly moving machine in which those guys were all working together to the common goal. And when they were on the precipice of punching their ticket, they faced a messianic performance, and I'll keep calling it that, from Mark Bagway and the Nightcrawlers, and then they got sent home. And then they had a whole offseason to blame everybody on the team of why it didn't work. And that's why I think they broke up. But the fact that they're getting back together doesn't change for me the fact that deep in ingrained into the DNA of the Watchmen for 2024 is that they were ready to break up. So what does that mean? I don't know. We'll see week one, because if they could just get on the right track week one against a really tough opponent, you know, they could throw this list right in the garbage and kind of start a new destiny. But for me, having them at 5, because when we first started talking about this, Matt, there was a lot less guys that we thought were on the roster. But B, that armor is starting to show some cracks based on the divorce that they kind of went through and then kind of punted on. And I wouldn't be surprised to see, you know, some of that frustration bubble over in a tight game. And that's the last thing that you want when, you know, especially week one. The matchup that they're getting is a team that's motivated to beat them because they lost to them last year, made a huge improvement at a lot of places, and we'll talk about that when we get to them, but also are the standard bearer in our league that I think they're starting to get their swagger back based on, you know, kind of the run that they're set up for 2024 in the Patterson U, which is their week one opponent.
Well, we move on here in the top 10 of the 2024 A7FL season. And outside of the Nightcrawlers, this is the only team that beat the Watchmen in 2023. The Trenton BIC coming in at number 4 on this list. And looking at the roster that they have, it is hard to argue that they should be higher on this list. But
shouldn't be higher, right?
No, should be. You can make the argument that with this roster, they should be higher on the list.
Yes, right. But yeah, it's hard to make the argument that they shouldn't be higher.
Yes.
Yeah, I got you.
But
I think
you think about the 3 plausible teams that are left in this top 10, you could see why.
Well, and I think we, at times when we were going over this top 10, there was a moment in which we made the argument that the number 4 team could be the number 1 team, right, Matt?
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that. I think it's not only fair to say, it's factually accurate to the anecdote, right? When we were doing this, we said, all right, are we going to put BIC number one? Now, BIC did win the offseason, especially early, when it was, to Derek Duncan's, quote, the night crawlers in Christ, and they were getting, names across the divisions and big-time signings and, oh, that guy's going there type of thing. To me, it's a net sum of about the same as where they were last year, unless we can count on the offensive linemen that were promised to us last year showing up. And I think we can. So when we look at the roster that BIC has, I think we agree that that's a top 1, 2, 3, and then obviously maybe 4 roster. But there is no reason why, if BIC does what they're capable of doing, that they're not easily the number 1 ranked team at a certain point in the season. And last year, it was a tough year for them because, as we've talked about in this offseason a lot, the repeat year is really difficult for teams in this league especially. Every professional league, to be clear, right? Every professional league has the same phenomenon, even college. But this league specifically, it's hard to win that repeat year because I love
any
to
league,
use
it's
the Bane
harder
line.
it's harder to win than
Climbing the mountain is easier than staying on top of it, because now that you're the hunted, now that you're the target, Insomniacs, every team is going to try to give you their best game, and if you're lucky, you're in a division that doesn't have top competition, and you can kind of show up in the second quarter and not have to worry about it. But that wasn't the case for the Northeast and BIC specifically last year. Now, I like to use the Bane quote from The Dark Knight Rises, that victory has defeated you, Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that happened to BIC last year. When they came into the 2022 campaign, the losses to the U were the motivation that drove them past the U and all the other teams that they played. They didn't lose any games that year, so when they came back in 2023, they didn't have that same motivation. Now, well, guess what? Now they've lost to the U twice. Motivation's there. They've seen a team from across the country hold up a trophy that they thought was supposed to be theirs, and they didn't earn it, so it's
Had their name on the plaque up until the fourth quarter.
And guess what? That motivation, I think, has to be there. And we'll see who they are for real against a team that, like we just said a couple teams ago on this list, in the Snow Tribe, that we respect. We like their roster. We don't know exactly what their high, the high end of their potential is. But BIC is going to get a little bit of a test in week 1. And last year, you almost could sense the type of year that BIC was going to have in that Renegades game that they played. Because the Renegades played the champs, gave them their best shot. BIC won, but that was not a championship-level performance week 1 from BIC.
No.
Now, they have Ashanti Worthy, and Ashanti Worthy, just like he did week 1 last year, he took the opening play of the season back to the crib. They have Sterry Codrington, who last season had never been more efficient as a passer than he was.
He was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the entire
of all
league.
time in league history.
Yeah.
I think the only one that kind of stands out to me is Woog with the Immortals, when he was thrown to Matt Riddick, who had like 50 touchdowns that year. Other than those like stupid NFL Blitz video game numbers that we've seen a couple of years here and there, and at times we see from teams in divisions that play zero defense and your pass rush, allows a quarterback 13 seconds in the pocket. I'm not mentioning anybody specific, am I? But anyway, I would dare teams to look at BIC at any point in the season, including the playoffs, by the way, and not expect a team that is capable of beating them by 6 touchdowns, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
And that includes the teams that are above them. So they're number 4 on our list. But just to be clear, now that we're at this point in the list, we're talking about big time.
These are the teams we
Championship
expect
contenders.
to see in the Final Four in some form or fashion. Or
Well,
at
unless
least
they knock each other out, yeah.
unless they knock each other out. And for me, the BIC getting Pac Money, getting Trey Robinson, getting these assets, and building off of what you had last year.
I'm still annoyed about the Trey Robinson thing.
I
thought it would have been fun.
It
But
would have been very fun, but you have all of that on top of that roster, and seemingly they have another Ashante-worthy level player on that roster. You have Courage Mosey coming back. You have all of this. And then you talk about our number 3 team. And we internally have this thing we call the Huff tax. And that's why the Animals felt so rich last year, because they were the recipients of the Huff tax. Our number 3 team not only got Quattro Huffin back, but got Kason Campbell. Got Snag Sosa. Anderson U is number 3 on our list. When you swap between 4 and 3, I think that the newest addition to the U defense, that really got me saying, okay, yeah.
Are you gonna say it now?
I'm not gonna say.
It's crazy. No, it's crazy. But I don't think we should say it. Let's let it be. But that is a big thing, and I don't want to cut you off. But keep going on it. I was just wondering if you were gonna say his name.
And when you look at that, and it's like, fuck, man, like you can't. There's 2 Ramadan brothers. Huff has an offense, and that guy is with the same defense that has Snag Sosa on it. Carlos Croslin can play anywhere on offense. It's like they're building this weird Nightcrawlers variant. Like you have 2 quarterbacks who can catch, who can throw, who can improvise. You have a line that's what the Watchmen, that's what the Nightcrawlers didn't have last year, was a line, and we'll get into that in a minute. But you have all of that, and then on the other side of the street, Snag Sosa can come off the end. He can play running back. There's so many.
And I think, and sorry to cut you off, I was going to kind of like skirt in as you tail off. But the fact is that without a consistent quarterback, they beat the team below them twice.
Yep.
And for all of the things that the UBIC rivalry is, what it wasn't last year was the team with the more hyped roster winning. It was the team that played the better game, that committed to the winning football kind of shit, right? The U, to me, last year proved a lot. And we talked about this last week with Ryan Shamar. Check out our State of the U address if you haven't already. I'm sorry for my Kenny Britton, my
Yes, your Kenny Britt impression. I really loved it that you were playing
Senator Kenny Britt, Titans wide receiver. I think that would actually be better for the state of Alabama. The state of the U right now is that they got their guy back. And when the U win a championship, except for that first year, who's their quarterback? It's Quattro Huffin. When we talk about quarterbacks in this league, who's the best quarterback in the history of it when you look at not just one season, but the entirety of this 10-year experiment called the A7FL? It's the guy playing quarterback for the U. And I think what Quattro Huffin did is he learned a little bit about the offenses that he wants to run when he had full control on the Animals. Because let's be clear, that U huddle is full of big-time player after big-time player at every single position. So, and this isn't knowing 100%, but I think some of what was happening with the U when Huff was still there was that guys, when things weren't working, were telling Huff, hey, that's not working. Let's do this thing that I know will work because I'm a also smart football mind and I respect you, but you should also respect me. And that's where the disconnect sometimes can happen and turn into the kind of animosity that you see guys arguing on the sidelines. Look no further than the Super Bowl. Travis Kelce screaming at Andy Reid. Poor Walrus, just sitting there just enjoying the Arctic. Poor guy. But anyway, getting Quattrell Huffin back and him going through the experiment of basically carte blanche doing whatever he wants with the Animals offense, I think he's going to implement a new wave of this kind of, we'll say, this flag infusion that the Nightcrawlers kind of, almost perfected last year, that the Insomniacs use at times. I think the U is going to have some of those elements to their offense. So are they going to bring back the winning formula that has gotten them to 4 championships in the 10 years that this league has existed? I think so. But I also think that they're adding new wrinkles to that offense, to that game plan that can make them even more dangerous, especially against a team like BIC that maybe thought that they had the U figured out because they played each other so consistently for so many years. Being able to kind of change up the paradigm by bringing in a new style, I think is just as important, maybe not more so, but maybe just as important, we'll see, as some of the roster moves that they made. Because let's be clear, BIC, it's going to be the game that everybody wants to watch. No disrespect to Vegas, but nobody's going to be as excited about Insomniac Sick With It as the entire league is and always will be for BIC.
They call that one a sellout at the curtain, brother.
I think putting them here at number 3 on the list for the U, they might be able to climb on this list, and we'll see really how effective they can be week 1 in a tough test against the Baltimore Watchmen.
And we go to the number 2 squad. And we go to the number 2 squad in our top 10 countdown, and it is the Tampa Nightcrawlers. And a team last year that was 2 plays away from winning the A7FL championship, Cory. The Bunak blessing was very present in Bullhead City, Arizona just a few months ago. And even though it seemed for a moment that the core of the Nightcrawlers were going to be gone.
Yeah, what 6 weeks ago the Nightcrawlers wouldn't have even made the top 10?
Well, they would have. I think they would have made the top 10 because they kept BME Case. They've kept some key players on offense, and they added. Shout out to the Parlay for breaking this news.
Devon
Gray and Mark
Public
Cooper.
Enemy number 1.
Yeah. Mark Cooper and Devon Gray returning to Florida in the 2024 season after spending some time out in Vegas. But 2 solid additions if you have Gray at running back. He's a guy who's also played quarterback before. Mark Cooper, a very talented wide receiver, has played secondary, went up against Destroying, I believe, at one point. He's
had a pretty good campaign for the Force last year.
Yeah, no, he was a solid player for the Force.
Wild can ball.
Yeah,
apparently
he certainly can. But adding those weapons to the Nightcrawlers, there's a lot of comments about what might happen with Logo Davis, Trey. What's going to happen with the core of the Nightcrawlers. But it seems right now everyone will be back.
And Logo and Bagway are right now penciled in to be, big time factors for the Nashville flag team. And similarly to the Insomniacs players in Davik Clark and Danye Lyons, there are question marks about those 2 players. And if we did a full top 70 of all the players in the league, Mark Bagway and Logo Davis would be at the top, very close to the top. But I think what the Nightcrawlers also bring is a depth of stars. I don't think they have a depth of the roster, right? Because if you look at their roster, it doesn't have as many names. They don't have the depth at offensive line and defensive line and corner, so that, those guys are playing both ways at times. But when you just list the names and you start with Bagway, you start with Logo, then you go to Rico Brown, one of the top wide receivers that we had. Then you go to BME Keese, right? We talked about Dr. C and whether we want to talk about him or not. We'll let him
he's coming back.
We'll let him float. Listen, but you guys wanted to make him the story, and then he hid from the attention. So let's just keep calling him Dr.
I'm sorry
C
that in all
and see if he's in.
It's like, oh no, I can't.
But what did I tell you? A guy who has competed and succeeded at the highest level does not want to just show up to have fun on a lower level, be the story so that everyone is looking, oh, look what I did against this guy, because all he could do is not do as well as he did in the NFL, right? So I get where he's kind of coming from. So Dr. C, you're my guy. I'll make sure that you can come in under the radar, and we can do one of those like replacements like the Ray Smith character where we could just call him just, Mr. Man, and then like nobody knows the difference. But anyway, Dr. C, my guy. But then you go Tyree McCants. I would be remiss to say Deontay Henderson. Thank God he's not playing for BIC, even though BIC got plenty of great football players
to beat your ass.
But listen, BIC, those guys, they'll try to kill me, but with the respect of a brother in Christ that knows me. I don't know what kind of energy Deontay Henderson would be bringing to me. He could actually come with the intent of actually murder. Now I know that he's a good guy off the field, and we've talked to him. He's involved with kids and the youth, and he's all about like great things off the field. But I've seen murderous intent on the field, so I'm just saying that. And that's kind of the story with the Nightcrawlers is the top names for their team are the top guys at those positions in the league or among the tops. It's just the question mark will be is the level of commitment those guys have to week in, week out showing up for games. And a lot of times teams that are that close to championships, they don't necessarily respond that well to the next year. Just think about all of the teams that lost the Super Bowl, how they rebounded the next year. A lot of them don't do that well. Many of them don't even make the playoffs. Now, that's the NFL. The A7FL is a little different. And I will say this to a man, all of the guys we mentioned are class acts that are professional football players. Like they do this for a living. So I think the professionalism is something that will help them avoid that hangover, that A7FL championship loss hangover. But I would not be shocked to see them back in the championship game, ready for the redemption that they've kind of been hunting for since they kind of burst onto the scene a couple years ago when they lost that rare breed game that they should have won.
Yeah.
And for letting that kind of sit in their craw all year, and then they get to the championship game and then lose the championship game the way they did, there's two routes they can go. Use it for motivation, or that becomes the straw that broke the camel's back. And I would be surprised if it's the latter and not the former. And that's why the Nightcrawlers line up as our number 2 preseason pick for the A7FL top 10 in year 10.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that they're not one of the favorites to make it out of the Eastern Conference with the team they have presently constructed, because holy shit, are they great at football.
Yeah, we saw them.
I know.
We used our eyes.
We've seen
we
them.
We used our eyes to see them play football. We know they're good. That's all really we have to say. But
one of the wildest experiences of my life. And I cannot wait for Championship Sunday.
That doesn't even take into account what they did to the Watchmen the week before in Ohio.
Yeah, that game, that Eastern Conference game, if you have not watched that one, holy smokes. That is a game to watch. But a team that we've seen a lot is at the top of the list. And I'd say this is the team that has the most spotlight and scrutiny on them than any team in A7FL history. And you can say that every year about the champion coming into the next season. But the Las Vegas Insomniacs at number 1 are there deservedly. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They have a player like RTC who can transform an offense. They have Scott Hamilton. They have the offense and defense that is a fucking war machine. AJ McQuaid coming off the edge. There's a lot of great talent on that team.
They feel confident that they replaced Tone Smith at linebacker. They feel confident that they replaced, to a certain extent, David Clark at wide receiver. Munchie looks, at least in the fall, to take more of a leading role in the wide receiving core.
The loss of Chris
I,
McWilliams is a big one.
That is kind of big, but they did have a decent amount of depth on that defensive line, and with the depth that they have at running back, I wouldn't be surprised to see RTC playing defensive end, which he is a very effective player. I saw him up close and
And
personal
if
when I was
Scott
out there playing as
McCorkle
well.
gets, our buddy over there on the broadcast for Las Vegas, you can watch them on Fox 5.2 and A7FL.TV. If he comes back healthy, we saw what he could do for the Kryptonite last season in the 2022/3 fall season. And if he's able to do that with that defense, I think that's a real big opportunity for them. But
and let's not hide the lead, right? They have a chokehold on the division. They really don't see
they're going to run
the
in
competition
my opinion,
out there. Yeah,
they're going to be the only team in the league to run the table outside of maybe Tampa
the Chaos
Nightcrawlers.
and the Nightcrawlers. Yeah.
I think the Chaos could run the table, but I think we're going to see from those three divisions a lot of what we saw the year before. Indianapolis could obviously play spoiler, but I think that when you're doing your predictions for the playoffs, you already know the answer for Nevada and possibly for Florida.
And hopefully we could be proven wrong.
Yeah, and we want to be we want to be proven wrong. Not that we don't want the Insomniacs to be successful. We want to be proven wrong in the sense that these teams are giving them the challenge that they want. This is a team that wants to be punched in the mouth. This is a team that wants a fight.
They want to fight. I think they'd rather dodge the punch, but they don't want somebody in their throat like throwing a slap box. They want an actual fight against an actual team. And for all the talk that we've said about that they haven't played anybody, it's not because they've dipped out on competition. They're not like missing out on Manny Pacquiao like they're Floyd Mayweather. No, they're calling out the teams that they want to play. It's just that they haven't had the opportunity to. And every team that they've played since they formed this new version of the Insomniacs, they haven't lost a game.
No.
Now, I will say this. I apologize personally to a member of the Insomniacs family that had called me up before we did this list and specifically requested to be left off completely. And I think the interesting thing is the reason why is because that person involved with the organization has a little bit of a weird feeling about this overconfident, reading their own press type of attitude that the almighty champion Insomniacs have seemed to kind of evolve into as the offseason has progressed from
do you see
winning.
Do you see it happening like the 1980 Lakers? Do you see the team that everyone expected to do well, but they fucking won it? They won the whole goddamn thing. And now they've won the whole goddamn thing. They won fall. And from now until late June, it seems like no one's going to be able to catch up to them.
And that's the danger zone that they kind of rest in.
But is that level of overconfidence is the only thing stopping the Insomniacs from winning another championship their focus, their precision, their growth, their development? Is it if they take it easy, are they going to lose the championship?
I'll say this. I think the narrative of that is familiar to fans. It makes the layperson that doesn't really know what the fuck they're talking about feel like they can have a conversation. 90% of the time, though, on a football field, the roster and the chemistry of the roster is going to make the difference in who wins and who loses, right, Matt? Like, we could talk about the narrative of, oh, well, this is happening, or that revenge, or this change of scenery for that player. Those are storylines that I think matter to the kind of narrative, the fictional telling of these athletic events. But at the end of the day, the athletic event always comes down to the skill of the performers. And it would be asinine to say that when you look at the Insomniacs roster, that they don't have both the most talented roster in the division by far, in my opinion, And Sikwit has a lot to look at and say this is good, but not at the level of depth that the Insomniacs have. I would also say that the the person involved with the Insomniacs that told us to lay them off the list does have reasonable concern about the attitude in which they have. But I think some of that attitude was already present and is maybe one of the reasons why, as bad as it looked in the championship game, as it did at times, they had the confidence to overcome that. So that might even be like a hidden superpower that they have, is that overconfidence and the "we're better" thing. And I've done better, Matt, at not doing the Munchie voice. Shout outs to Shuford.
Thank you.
But I will caution in saying this, because as much as that is true, that what I just said is that the narrative is sometimes bullshit. Let's look at last year. That's the same exact narrative that we had for BIC. Let's look at the year before that. That's the same exact narrative that we were talking about when the U had won something like, what, 26 or 27 straight?
Yeah.
The Immortals couldn't even field a team to bring back into the A7FL after they won the championship. The Chiefs before them, their team disbanded and didn't make the playoffs the next year. And then you look at the BIC team that won before that. That team, yes, BIC as a organization won another championship, but that BIC roster completely crumbled and moved on to other places. The bulk of those guys going, like the bulk of the main, drivers of that team going to the rival in the U to win the 2020 and the 2021 championships. Winning the repeat championship is about how badly that team wants to go down for winning back-to-back, not just being a champion. Because the thing is that no one can ever take away from any of those players that were on the Insomniacs roster last year that they are A7FL champions for the rest of their lives.
They changed the course of this league's history.
And good for them, and rightfully so, because they deserved it and they worked hard to do it. It's going to take twice as much effort when it matters. And maybe a lot cleaner of a game than we've seen from them, maybe in their existence, Matt, if we really break it down. Because when you talk about that fall, undefeated, sure. Did they look good against Sikwit? Did they look good against the Alienators in the playoffs for the fall? Did they look good against the Nightcrawlers that entire game? Did they turn the ball over 4+ times against the Chaos? Did they play with their food in Sikwit the week before that? Right? When we talk about the games that mattered, in week 1 of last year, did they go down to Sikwit at like 14-0 and then come back and win? So all of these things that I'm bringing up, all of these things, what does it say? It says the Insomniacs won the championship last year. And I don't think we saw a wire-to-wire perfect game from them. So let's go two ways with that. A, if they do put together perfect games, they're going to be a really tough team to beat. But the other way you can look at that is they are so close to giving a team a victory. They're so close to losing a game as opposed to winning a game in the future, especially when it gets down to crunch time against the big time opponents that they talk a lot of big game against. And I think rightfully so, but they haven't played yet, so we'll see. To me, the story of the Insomniacs season is going to come down to whether they finish or whether they are finished by another team. And pause if you want, but if they get finished by another team, it will be their own fault for allowing that to happen. And they're number 1 on our list right now, and they rightfully deserve it. And honestly, there's not an argument that you can make if you're being realistic, unless you just went with our friend that said keep them off completely. But I think more than even the BIC showed in the lead up to last season, the Insomniacs are starting to show some of the evidence of a team that is a lot more vulnerable than they might appear as all powerful and almighty. And if you say one negative word about them, Kenny Mack gets on the comments is talking about how it's all cap, right? But is Kenny Mack going to show up to enough games to be prepared for the playoffs? Are they going to get those weapons back that they lost to a professional league? Is Scott Hamilton going to have, and this is probably the most important thing, the time in the pocket against some of these more physical teams that they hypothetically might face in some of the postseason games that might occur? Or are they going to kind of get back to the championship, business as usual, and repeat in a way that is a resounding fuck you to the rest of the league? I don't know. That's up to their level of commitment to being the top team and not just becoming the top team. And that, I think, is going to be the story for the 2024 Insomniacs.
I completely agree. And I think that to every player, to every team, to every coach, to every GM, to every person who is going to step out on Sunday and represent this league, it's time to answer the fucking bell. This is the 10th season of this league, and we're about to crown our 10th champion. If you're not excited at the prospect of that, World Football League has never done that. XFL, USFL,
nope.
Any version of the UFL. Hell, the American Football League, whatever version of the American Football League. The All-American Football Conference, I think, lasted 8 seasons.
Remember how Bill Polian was running the league? And it was supposed to be the spring?
Oh, yeah, the Alliance of American Football.
Yep, with Andrew Luck's dad, Oliver Luck. Nope.
That was the XFL. Well, that was the XFL, but...
That was the XFL?
Yeah, he was in the XFL.
It's funny, I combine all those leagues that only lasted a couple of weeks because they weren't solvent by the end. I just all combine them because they're basically in the course of the spring. They are irrelevant compared to the A7FL.
You cut a lot of paragraphs out of what I was going to say, but yes.
Ah, shit, my bad.
But to wrap things up, because we have been talking for fucking 2 hours.
Yeah, Matt, that's that bad chemistry. Shout-outs to Joey B.
But this Sunday, if you are mad that someone called you ass, if you are mad that you're not higher in the rankings or even on the list, if you weren't in a top 7, if you have never been mentioned on this podcast before because we don't know enough about you, make yourself noticed.
Stop joining the team that has 6 other guys at your position.
And even if
won't
you
touch
do that,
the field,
if you
baby
get on the
Joker.
field once, he's on the BIC too.
No, is he? Really? We won't see him. Maybe we will, but I doubt it.
But to that point,
that was stupid.
This is the last breath you're going to take before things get really fucking crazy. So breathe in and breathe out. Because in 2 sleeps from now, Season 10 starts. And do you want to be brought up on this podcast because you knocked a motherfucker into the dirt or you went viral with a highlight? Or is it because you were demanding all season that everyone notice you? And then when the lights are on, when you're on HBCU+, when you're on Caffeine, when you get 1 million views on Caffeine, and all you did in 60 minutes was do nothing but stare at that camera and try to figure out what you were going to write on Instagram, Facebook,
it was the refs.
X.
It was the fucking refs.
But if that's what you're if that's your thinking, it's going to be a long season for you.
Or a short one, you'll get cut.
But to the teams that think that you are in the upper tier, prove it. To the teams that are in the upper tier, prove why you are in the upper tier. Prove why you were in the championship game. Prove why you were in the playoffs. Prove why you are an organization that we will continue to talk about on this show. And that goes to us, too. We've got to step it up. We've got to go in and go out. I bought a fucking suit jacket. I haven't bought a suit jacket since the pandemic. And then on top of that, every single announcer, referee, statistician, podcaster, vlogger, whatever Batman, fucking everyone. this is it. This is the time. This is the place. This isn't the internet anymore. This isn't Facebook. This isn't Instagram. This isn't a podcast anymore. So if you want to, this is. But if you want to go live, if you want to be on the other side of the ball, if you want to be asked the same 5 questions, or if you want to come